September 11th, 2001, a day that would forever change the course of history. What began as a typical Tuesday morning quickly became one of the darkest days in modern times, as America and the world watched in horror as a series of coordinated terrorist attacks unfolded. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost, countless others were affected, and the scars of that day remain etched into the collective memory of humanity. This is the story of 9/11s, the events, the aftermath, and the impact that continues to reverberate to this day. The morning of September 11th started like any other. The weather was clear, the sun shining brightly over the city that never sleeps. People arrived at work in the World Trade Center, unaware that in just a few hours, everything would change. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, hijacked by 5 terrorists, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. What at first seemed like a freak accident would soon reveal itself as part of a deliberate, coordinated attack. Within minutes, news outlets across the world began broadcasting the images of the burning tower. Confusion reigned as the world tried to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. Then, just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, struck the South Tower. The realization hit this was no accident. America was under attack. Both towers were now engulfed in flames, with temperatures reaching over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, fueled by the jet fuel from the planes. For those trapped inside, escape became nearly impossible. As firefighters and police officers bravely rushed into the towers to help, the situation grew increasingly dire. Thousands of people were trapped above the impact zones, with little hope of escape. Heroic efforts were made, but at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed, sending a massive cloud of debris through the streets of Lower Manhattan. Just 29 minutes later, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower followed, collapsing in a thunderous roar. In less than 2 hours, the iconic Twin Towers, symbols of American economic power, had been reduced to rubble. The heart of New York City lay in ruins, and the world was left in shock. But the devastation was not confined to New York. At 9:37 a.m., a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the Pentagon, the heart of America's military. The impact created a massive fireball, killing 125 people inside the building, along with all 59 passengers aboard the plane. The attack on the Pentagon sent shockwaves through the nation's capital, further illustrating the scale of the assault on American soil. But another tragedy was yet to unfold. On board United Airlines Flight 93, passengers learned of the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Realizing their own plane had been hijacked, a group of passengers, in a final act of bravery, attempted to regain control of the cockpit. Their efforts thwarted the hijackers' plan to crash the plane into another key target, most likely the U.S. Capitol or the White House, at 10:03 a.m. Flight 93 crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing all 40 aboard, but saving countless lives in the process. Their courage became a symbol of resilience in the face of terror. The aftermath of the attacks left the world in mourning. In New York City, thousands were dead or missing. First responders worked tirelessly to sift through the rubble, hoping to find survivors, though their efforts yielded few miracles. The debris from the collapsed towers covered lower Manhattan, and a massive rescue and recovery operation began. That evening, President George W. Bush addressed a grieving nation, vowing that those responsible for the attacks would be brought to justice. His words offered comfort to many, but the scale of the tragedy was almost incomprehensible. America and the world was united in grief. On September 14th, President Bush stood atop the wreckage at Ground Zero, delivering an impromptu speech through a bullhorn. It was a moment of solidarity, one that captured the resolve of a nation determined to rebuild and heal. In the weeks that followed, the United States launched the War on Terror. The primary focus was to dismantle Al-Qaeda, the terrorist organization responsible for the attacks, and to overthrow the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, which had provided them with safe harbor. The US military, along with its allies, began Operation Enduring Freedom, marking the beginning of what would become a decades-long conflict in the Middle East. The hunt for Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the attacks, became a top priority. It would take nearly a decade, but on May 2, 2011, bin Laden was killed in a covert US operation in Pakistan, offering a sense of closure to many who had suffered from the horrors of 9/11s. Today, the site of Ground Zero is a place of remembrance and reflection. The 9/11's memorial honors the nearly 3,000 victims of the attacks, with the names of those who perished etched into the surrounding pools where the Twin Towers once stood. One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower, now stands tall as a symbol of resilience and hope.